The Souls series may have some of the most iconic areas that gaming can offer, but it also has some infamously bad areas. So today I will go through the games and talk about the worst area in each of them, in my opinion. Starting with Demon Souls, I went with 1-4, as I believe it's the hardest area while also being the most boring area, which is not a good combo. So let me take you on a little journey with me. You run through a courtyard with 3 red enemies, which you can kill to make the run back easier as they don't respawn, but that does mean fighting a triple gank. Then you run through a narrow staircase with 2 enemies blocking your way, and some archers shooting you while you're at it. If you make it past that, you reach a bridge. Now remember those enemies on the staircase? They'll most likely still be chasing you, so you want to go through this bridge as quickly as possible, but there's one big problem. A dragon spitting fire on you about once every 5 seconds. You can bait the first round of fire by running back, but now there are 2 enemies there ready to jump you, so you need to dodge them, and then quickly run across the bridge before fire starts raining on you once again. Oh, and on this bridge there are 2 fat guys that can shoot fire magic at you that does a lot of damage. Now you made it past the bridge and think, surely this is it. Nope. If you make it past all that, you reach a large set of stairs leading to a building, and the dragon has now perched on top of said building. Yay! There is a strategy to evading the fire, but it took many deaths of trial and error to learn it, and once you finally make it up the stairs, you are greeted by yet another red enemy, but you fight him on a fairly narrow platform, so it's easy to throw off, and now there are finally no more enemies in this area to run past. No, you just need to take an elevator that takes a little over 50 seconds, and you finally made it to one of the hardest bosses in the game, so have fun doing all that every time you die to him. For Dark Souls 1, I'm going with the Duke's Archives, which is probably a shock to many of you, but please hear me out. You start by running through the library to get to an elevator that's close by, which leads you to Seath for the first time, and in this fight he's invincible, he cannot be vinced. So you are guaranteed to die and get cursed, making you have half of your max health forever or until you eat a purging stone, so thank god you can teleport at this point in the game. Now you get sent to a prison, which is honestly a decent part of this area. I do enjoy escaping it, but everything after that is horrible. You make it back to another section of the library, and there are so many ranged enemies in this area, including wizards that have a lot of health and can buff their own and other enemies' damage, which makes them basically one-shot you, which I'm not a fan of, sadly. And then you need to do a Hogwarts puzzle where you move some stairs so that you can get to the right area to move a bookshelf, revealing the staircase into the magic crystal forest. And doing this with all of these enemies shooting you is easily the worst experience I had in this game. Yes, worse than Tomb of the Giants and Lost Isolith combined, not really. This area is also very big, while also looking identical in most places, which makes it hell to know where you're trying to go and where you've already been. For Dark Souls 2, there are a lot of options, but there's really only one option, the Frigid Outskirts. For those of you lucky enough to not know the horrors of this area, let me explain. You start off in a snowstorm in the middle of nowhere with no directions and no idea where you're trying to go. You run around for a little bit until the snow clears and you see a building that you run towards. And lo and behold, there's nothing in it. But hey, you see another building in the distance that you start running towards. But the snow comes back in and you see nothing. Then you hear a reindeer and think Santa has come to give you presents. But no, he gave you This reindeer is made out of metal and is out to kill you. Now you might think, oh, it's just one reindeer, it shouldn't be too hard to kill. Well, it has a lot of health, is super fast, does a lot of damage and can shoot lightning at you. Once you finally kill it, you see another house that you run towards. But once again, the snow sets in and another 2 reindeer spawn and you die. GG. Alright, now you've done this about 15 times and finally find the crater where the boss lies. The reindeer are still chasing you as you've given up trying to kill them, and you make it across the narrow bridge to the fog wall. What greets you is one of the hardest bosses in the game, a gank fight with 2 tanky tigers. You kill one of them and think you're about to kill the other one, but no. He buffs himself, making you do less damage to him, and he starts to heal. This is the only boss in all of my playthroughs that I gave up on and decided to summon NPCs to help me, because I just could not bear going through this area for the 30th time. For those of you that are curious, this area takes around 3.5 minutes to run through, and I don't think I got through it once without getting hit. Bloodborne doesn't really have an area that I dislike, but the worst one has to be Nightmare of Mensis. For starters, this is the only area with the winter lanterns, which for those of you whose eyes are yet to open, are enemies that can hit you from across the map, draining your health and building up frenzy, which does a lot of damage once it pops. There are also some aggressive wolf-human-cat hybrids that can kill you almost instantly if you're not careful around them. The area itself also just doesn't look too interesting, as it's mostly just grey rock everywhere. And once you enter the building, which leads to Murgo's loft, you're greeted by a room full of spiders hanging from the ceiling. And fun fact about me, I'm deathly afraid of spiders. Now, you can run past them fairly easily, but that still doesn't make up for the fact that you have some 12-legged freaks chasing you. And once you're past this, you reach Murgo's loft, which I do actually quite enjoy, as it has a nice layout with some good shortcuts and interesting enemies, such as crows with dog bodies and dogs with crow bodies. This area also has the best farming spot in the game, besides the cum dungeon, where you just fist some pigs and make them fight the evil version of the KKK. Wait, that doesn't sound right. But hiding in this area also lies one of the worst bosses that have ever been made, who I won't get into in this video, but if you know, you know. Dark Souls 3 is another no-brainer, and it's Keep. Despite what Miyazaki might tell you, there's absolutely nothing fun about thick poison swamps that you can barely walk through, especially not when they're filled with tough enemies that aren't even slowed by the water, ready to kill you at any time. Not to mention the big silent demon looking things that can launch magic at you, and of course the basilisks. Now thankfully this area isn't too long, but it is big enough for you to get lost while searching for the chimneys that you need to extinguish, especially since everything here looks exactly the same, and even when you reach the chimneys they're guarded by some of the craziest enemies in the game, but at least you get one of the best bosses of all time after dealing with this. Sekiro also doesn't have many areas I dislike, but there's a small section of Ashenat Depths that is just horrible. It is of course a poison swamp, which is riddled with some of the hardest enemies in the game, which are the guys with the cannons that they can use as both melee and ranged weapons, and since there are so many of them, it can be hard to fight them one-on-one without getting shot in the back by one of their friends. Now, there's a mini-boss in here that you need to kill to escape, and you can get a free death blow if you sneak up on her, but if you alert any of the enemies, she also gets alerted, and you won't be able to get the free death blow. But once you do get the death blow, everyone gets alerted, so now you have 1 or 2 enemies shooting at you while you're fighting her, which is not ideal, and I've died many times because of this. So basically you either clear the area and fight her twice, or fight her once and get riddled with bullets, neither of which are good options in my opinion. Now once you finally get through here, you're free to go into the Misty Forest, unless you already killed the Guardian Ape before going through here, which if you did, you will now have to fight the Ape Duo, which is one of the worst and most unfair bosses in the game. For Elden Ring, I'm only going to count places where you can't use torrents, and I am going with the Subterranean Shunning Grounds. While I don't hate this area, it is just very frustrating to get through, from the thin walkways with imps sprawling everywhere to the narrow tunnels filled with rats and basilisks. This area has it all when it comes to gameplay that really isn't fun. The tunnels are probably the biggest maze in any of the FromSoft games, because every time I've gone through them, I've gotten lost for at least 30 minutes, because the way you're supposed to go is a random hole in one of the tunnels, and there are a lot of random holes. Now, when you get past the maze, you're greeted with a reskin boss, but at least it's a reskin of one of the best bosses, but it's in a worse arena and not nearly as cool. And now you're close to the end, but there's one part of this area still left, the parkour section. Now granted, this isn't nearly the worst parkour section that has been in a FromSoft game, since you can actually jump in this one, but it still requires good precision, because if you slip up once, you are dead. Boy, do I feel like I'm gonna get crucified for saying this. My least favorite area in Shadow of the Erdtree is Shadow Keep. Now hold on, let me explain. A lot of the area is good, but there are 2 sections that I just really do not like. I'll start talking about the Specimen Storehouse, which is the lesser of 2 evils. I really just do not enjoy this area, as you just do some parkour on some feet and some animals, and then you spend the rest of your time searching for a lever, which you don't know you're searching for, and this area is big with a lot of different sections. I at least do enjoy the fire enemies in this area, but the rest of them are pretty bad, as it's just old people and bats, which are some of the most annoying enemies in the game. At least you are rewarded with one of the best bosses in the game after doing this, but if you want to fight Gaius, you'll have to go through here again, but at a higher section, which is even more narrow and even more bad, only to reach one of the worst bosses in the game. The other section of Shadowkeep that I do not like is the Church District, which you also need to go through to reach Gaius. To get through here, you need to parkour over some water that will kill you. All the while, you have magic people shooting at you, and again you need to find a lever which drains the water, revealing the lower section of this area, which has not 1, but 2 ulcerated tree spirits, which are some of my least favorite bosses in the game. This is just a big area where you need to find the little things, and I'm not really a fan of it.